In this lecture, we're going to look at menus and flows through the application and also a web view. In the last lecture, we looked at how to create a results view. And what's interesting is that if we look at this screen flow, we see that we start with the main menu. I know that's probably a bit hard to see at this current zoom level. We start at the main menu. We can take several paths. We can go to a color search. That will show us results, and then that will show us details. We can go to a GPS where we can GPS a screen. Well, I'm sorry, we can GPS a plant. We can search for that plant. It will take us to the plant results. But then instead of going to details, it's going to take us right back and populate the GPS screen with whatever plant we selected. We can go to bloom date and enter inventory, which will take us to the search screen, which will take us to the results, and then again take that plant right back to this screen. So we see that nearly every flow we have, and also we can also go directly to the search screen, search for plants, and then see results. We see that nearly every flow that we have is going to touch the search screen at some time. But we will also see a bit of a difference. Sometimes we will land on a results page, click a result, and that'll take us back 2 screens to whichever activity initiated the search. Other times we'll go to results and then that will take us to details. So we're going to have some kind of flag that tells us where to go when we hit that results screen. Do we return results or do we come right back? Also, we're going to have to do some kind of menu system to allow us to do these different navigation paths. Now, to be honest with you, the Plant Places app, the first screen that you see, is basically a main menu with a bunch of buttons. That's generally a pattern we wish to avoid. It's generally a better idea to land on the screen that you're going to use 80% of the time and then allow navigation to other screens. And I really thought about that a lot. But on the other hand, with Plant Places Mobile, there were 2 distinct audiences. Homeowners and consumers who wanted to find a plant by color, and then nursery professionals who might want to GPS plants, and then several other audiences as well. And because I didn't want to rule out one audience for the other, I just went ahead and threw the main menu up there. Nonetheless, in our app, I think what we'll do is we'll start with the GPS a plant screen, but then we'll give the option to not GPS a plant and go straight to the search, from the search to results, and from results to details. Now, one thing I also stress about mobile apps is that if you're going to have a true mobile app, make sure you're using something that is inherent to the mobile device, like the GPS, the camera, the accelerometer, messaging, anything like that that's inherent to the device. If you're not using any of those, think about if you actually need a mobile app or if what you really need is just a well-styled web page. Now, on the other hand, don't stay in the mobile app any longer than you have to. Don't replicate what you might already have on the web. As soon as you can, go ahead and hand over to the web for several reasons. One reason is it's multi-platform. You don't have to design a new screen for Android and iOS and Windows Phone and BlackBerry. You don't have to do that. On the other hand, the web advertisements also pay better than mobile advertisements do. Now, you can't take a web advertisement and put it in a mobile app. However, if your app opens a browser, you can then show web advertisements in that browser and allow click-throughs there. So that's a couple reasons why when we do this detail page, we don't want to reinvent the wheel. Instead, we want to go maybe to a web page that is mobile friendly. So it doesn't have excessive navigation. It has fonts and buttons that are easy to see on the mobile device. So given that was a little mock-up in Fluid UI, by the way. If you if you happen to take me in for Intro to Mobile, this is something we talked about in that class. Really nice. I like the way this works. So you can mock up the screens. Let me readjust this a little bit. And you can also click through, hit the play and click through nav. So I can hit GPS a plant. I can hit select a plant. I come to the plant search screen. I can act like I'm filling in details and then hit search. This takes me to the screen where we have results. So as you see, that's very similar to the app that we've been building so far. The screen layout, the screen flow there is very similar. A great idea to consider using something like this Fluid UI for storyboarding, because you can find that you will look and you will be able to see screens that you can share, and also redundant screens and any other screens that you might not need, and that will then save you time from making those screens. So highly recommend you do something like that on your final project. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is we want to make a menu that's going to allow us to get to this advanced search screen in one of two ways. Either through the GPS screen or just directly there if we were to, say, search for a plant and want to see the details. So I'm going to load up Eclipse, and we see that if I expand the project, there's this res menu folder. And that's very popular. That's very good to know, because we can define our menu in XML just like our Android manifest. There's a way you can hard code the menu as well. It's kind of ugly. It's better if we can just create it as an XML file. So what we'll do now is right click, and we're going to choose new, and then we'll choose other. And we're going to choose Android XML file from the list. You can always type to filter if that makes it easier. Say Android XML file. You can filter like that because there are quite a few options. Choose next. And it knows the resource type is menu, which is very nice. And it also knows the root element is called menu. So I'll just call this plant places menu, all lowercase. I think we're in good shape there. And then I'm going to choose next. I think we're in good shape here as well. So I'll go ahead and choose finish. Okay. The menu comes up, and I'm going to Control M so that we can see it a little bit better, because this comes up with a little wizard that we can use to add items to the menu. So I'm going to choose Add, and I'm going to choose Item. A menu item is an individual item we can press. Okay. ID, we need to give it some kind of ID, and this is where having a limited resolution is a bit of a minus. Let's see, we'll call it ID. We'll call this one MNU find plant. All right, let's say MNU GPS plant. That's better. Now, if you see we have a little @ symbol and a plus, that tells the Android system that we need to, it needs to create a constant for this item. It needs to create a number, a unique number that represents this item. Menu category, don't think we need. I think we're good there. Order and category we can leave alone. Title, I'm going to choose new string because we want to have this an external string, one of the things in strings.xml. And we'll call this GPS a plant. And string, we'll just call MNU GPS a plant. Or we call it LBL GPS a plant. Whatever, some kind of name value pair. And then we choose OK. And OK. Alphabetic shortcut. We could use something like, let's see, new string. I'm just going to call this a G, and the string will be G for GPS. And OK. So that means that we can just type the letter G and it will activate this menu item. Numeric shortcut, we're good. Everything else we ought to be OK. Checkable, checked, visible. We ought to be good there. OK. Now, one neat new feature that's new in Android 3.0 and greater is this on-click option. And the on-click option allows you to specify a method that will be called when this menu item is selected, which is similar to how we did our button on-click. The only trick is that that's only in Android 3.0 and greater, and I found at this point, we're in September 2013 as I record this, at this point about 30% of users of Plant Places Mobile are on 2.2, Android 2.2, and I don't want to rule them out. So that's an option, but we'll go ahead and do it old school style just as well. Show as action. I'm going to click if room on this one. What that will do is that will allow this menu item to show up in the action bar, which is the bar up at the top of the application. So we'll go ahead and choose that if room. that will allow it to show if there is room. I think we're in good shape. So ID, and I think we're good. I'm going to go ahead and hit save. Okay, now it's important, we need to remember MNU GPS plant. As a matter of fact, it's probably worthwhile to put that in just a little notepad here, because I know I'm going to need it in just a few. Okay. Okay, so I'll put it, oh, daggone it. Copy, and paste. Well, it doesn't want to paste, so I'll just type it in, MNU GPS plant. So now I'm going to need that in just a moment. Okay, so I move that out of the way. Let's add one more menu item, and we will call this, let's see. I don't want him to be selected. I don't want to be a, okay, yes, I want to click in the top level, item, and okay. And we will call this ID, we'll call it MNU search plants. So to search for plants without GPSing, just to search for their details. Title, I'll go ahead and give this a string representation. So new string, and we'll call this MNU search and search plants, something like that. And okay. And okay, and there we go. Alphabetic shortcut, I can choose new. Okay, and we'll make it a string M and just the letter M, which means if someone chooses the letter M, it's going to go straight to this menu item. Okay, numeric shortcut checked visible. I think we're all good here. Again, the on-click would be very nice if we have an audience that's Android 3.0 and greater. We're getting there, but we're not there yet. I would say give it about a year, and you'd probably be fairly safe to assume that your audience is on 3.0 and later. At this time, though, I really wouldn't want to rule anybody out. So let me go ahead and choose save. And now what I'm going to do, this is an XML generator. If we look behind the scenes, we'll see what it created. It created an XML document with a root element of menu, and then it gave it two different tags inside, MNU GPS plant and MNU search plant. I'm going to go ahead and grab that, and I'm going to, boom, like so. So I remember that. Okay, we gave it our alphabetic shortcut. Ooh, you know what? With this one, I forgot to say show as action. So let me go back, and on my MNU search plant, so it show as action, we'll go ahead and say if room, and okay, and save. And then that will go back, and that will update show as action if room. So we're all good there. So we save. Okay, now we want to display this menu. So I'm going to Control M so we can go back to our friend find location. Or location finder rather. Okay. Now we have to do a little bit of trickery here. We have to tell it when to display and how to display. What's going to happen is, okay, by the way, where are we? We're in the action class that represents our GPS screen. We called it Location Finder. We want it to display when the Android operating system asks for a menu to paint. Okay, so in the life cycle of creating an activity, the Android operating system is going to ask that activity. It's going to say, hey, do you want to show a menu? And it's going to ask that question by calling a method that's called onCreateOptionsMenu. Now, as always, don't worry about the full name because we have a little shortcut. This is a method we know that's going to get called, so we say onCreate, and then I type O, hold Control Space. That's enough to find the right method. So onCreateO with a capital C and a capital O, and there we go. Now what we have to do is we have to say attach to our XML menu. What we need to do now is get something called a Menu Inflater, and what that does is that associates our XML with the menu. So I'm going to invoke a method called getMenuInflater. Of course, we know the trick is we don't have to type the entire thing out. We start to type the method, hold Control and hit space, it auto-completes for us. Now this is a method that's going to return something. And so what we can do is hold down Control and press 1, and choose the option Assign Statement to New Local Variable. It's going to give to us a menu inflater. And we can use that to associate the menu and the layout together, the menu and the activity together. But we're going to need to store it in a variable first. We only need it inside of this method, so that's why we choose local variable. If we needed it outside of this method, we would choose field, but since it's inside this method, we just choose local variable. That's fine. We'll let it stick with that. And that's good. Okay, so next line we'll say in menu inflater dot inflate. Okay, and we have to give it a constant identifier to the menu, which is r.menu, and then the name of the menu, which is plant places menu, and then we associate it to the menu object passed into this method, and we're all good. Finally, just return true. This method requires that we return a Boolean, which is kind of weird. It really should be void. It really shouldn't require anything. But hey, there we go. We just have to return true and we're good. At this point, I'll save and I'm going to Control M. And I just want to see if the menu appears. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to choose Debug and Android application. And we'll give this a moment to raise up the menu. And there we go, we'll attach it to our existing AVD. We'll give this a moment to raise up the application and see if we can get our menu. Now here's the cool part. Because I told them to go in the action bar, take a look. There they are. Now the trick is we click right now and nothing happens because we haven't said how to handle this, but incredibly, there they are. And so you see, it's very easy for the user to navigate around because we have our two menu options right up here in the bar. So good way for quick navigation. The other trick is if I go to the search screen, we're going to see we don't get those menu options anymore. Hopefully I have the debugger up. So you see we don't get those menu items. So these are two things that we need to figure out how to handle. Okay, so I go back to Location Finder. And first of all, how do I handle when someone actually clicks the menu? Well, there's a different method that we're going to invoke, and it's called onOptions. And you know, I forget what else it is, but that's okay because I'm going to type onOptions. I'm going to choose onOptions item selected. And that will give me the method that is called when we actually pick something. Now here's the trick. We have to figure out which one we picked. So, okay, if you see it passes in a menu item. It passes in an object of type menu item. Okay? If you recall when we made the XML, and let me see if I can find it. I don't see it right off the bat here. If you recall when let me disconnect. When we made that XML menu, just a moment as I bring it up. So plant places menu. The actual XML had these two items inside, okay? The GPS of plant and the, we had the GPS of plant and the search plants. Each of those actually resolves to a menu item object. Each of those resolves to a menu item object. So we have to figure out which one the user clicked. And it's not that hard, it's just the syntax is a little bit goofy. So what I need to do is I need to set up a switch case statement. A switch case goes like this. We start with the word switch. Okay? We pass a value into that switch and then we run it through a set of cases. And the cases are the different possible values that the switch could be. That probably doesn't make much sense, does it? Okay, let me put it to you this way. I'm going to say item.get item ID. Do you see how we have item coming in here, and that's the menu item, the option the user clicked on? Item.get item ID. Okay, that item ID is either r.menu.mnu. Oop, did I get it right? Sorry, r.id. r.id.mnu GPS plant if the user clicked the GPS plant button, or it's going to be r.id.mnu search plants if the user clicked the search plant button. Okay, let me tab in these case statements, just give it a bit of indentation to make it nicer. So this item ID here is either going to be this ID if the user clicked on GPS supplant, or it's going to be this ID if the user clicked on search plants. I know the syntax is really goofy, but we start with the switch, and then we put in the parentheses of that switch a value that we're evaluating. The cases should cover all of the possible values that item.getItemID could be. In this case, because we are looking at a menu with 2 items on it, those values will either be GPS supplant or search plant. Okay? Now what we'll want to do is we'll want to call a method. We'll say, we'll say invoke GPS plant, okay, like so. And then we'll say return true, okay. Then for save plants, we'll say invoke search plants, okay. And let me terminate that with a semicolon, and then return true. So it's only going to run one or the other. If neither of those match, it will fall down here and do something else, but don't worry about that. For our cases, these will match. Okay, one thing that's a bit confusing, sorry, clicked on the wrong thing. One thing that's a bit confusing is that we don't have a method called invoke GPS plant or invoke search plant. So what I need to do is I need to click on that because we're getting a red line, and we know the rule of thumb. When we're getting a red line, the thing we need to do is to fix that red line as soon as possible. So I'm going to hold Control and press 1, and I'm going to choose Invoke GPS Plant. Okay. For Search Plant, I'm going to hold mouse. I'm going to click on it, Control 1, and create that method as well. Okay, and save. Wow, that was a lot of stuff. So let me try to clarify things by putting some comments here. This method will be invoked when the user chooses to search plants on the menu. Okay, invoke GPS plant. This method will be invoked when the user chooses to GPS a plant. Inside of these methods, if we can assume this method will be invoked when the user chooses to search plants, and the other method will be invoked when the user chooses to GPS a plant. If we can assume that those are true, then it's fairly easy to figure out what to do. Let me clean up a little bit. We just make an intent search plants intent equals new intent, and we can make it an explicit intent because in both cases we're navigating to another action within this app. So this comma, and then we're going to say, where is it? Control M, just a moment, and the name of the class is plant search activity. Okay, Control M. Okay, plant search activity dot class. Okay, start activity, search plants intent. Why not start activity for result? Well, in this case, the user is choosing a menu option, which means the user basically wants to start over in that screen, start new. Okay, so we don't need any information back on this screen. I'm going to save, and we'll do the same thing for invoke GPS. Okay, clean things up a bit. Intent GPS plant intent equals new intent. This comma location finder dot class. Okay, start activity GPS plant intent, and we'll save. Okay. Looks pretty good so far. Looks like I don't have any compile errors. Let's just see if this works. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a breakpoint on line 231 on the, there we go. I'm going to put a breakpoint on line 231, and we're going to go ahead and debug, and we're going to watch what happens when we choose this menu item. Okay, choose the running AVD. It'll take just a moment to bring this up. Okay, and it's come up. So you see that we are in the GPS of plant screen because we have our latitude and longitude. I'm going to click on search plants now, and if all goes well, okay, the debugger's engaged because I set a breakpoint on invoke search plants. Okay? As a matter of fact, I had to set a breakpoint a little bit earlier. I had to actually set the breakpoint on the switch case statement. Let me do that. Okay, next time around we'll see that. We see what's happening now as I hit play is it's just going to go and it's going to raise up the search screen. But the search screen not in a manner that's going to return to the GPS screen. It's just bringing up the search screen. Let me go again one more time, except this time I have the breakpoint set a bit earlier and we can watch what happens. So I hit search plants and we see the first thing that happens is it's going to invoke on options items selected. Now, one thing I can do in the debugger that's really nice is I can highlight an expression, hold down Control Shift and press I, and it will give me the value of that expression. So this is returning some very long number, which is completely pointless. But it just so happens that that's the same number that's attached to this over here. So we don't really care what the number is. We just need to make sure that when the user clicks on search plants, we go to search plants. So watch when I F6 here, it's going to jump down right around line 216. There we go. And it's going to simply invoke that search plants. There we go. And it's going to bring up the search plant screen. Okay, now we have, whoop, there we go. Okay, I was going to say, we have a couple of considerations. First of all, we still don't have those menu items on the search screen. Secondly, we have something kind of odd. And that is within, let's see if I go back to Java View, within the location finder, we have a method that is invoking the location finder, and that seems kind of weird. Well, what we can do is we can share this functionality because it is common. We can share this functionality with both the location finder and the search screen. We just have to do a bit of refactoring. Okay, so let me show you something right now. We have something going on, location finder extends activity. That means that location finder is a direct child of activity. What I can do is I can make that a grandchild of activity instead and put something between location finder and activity. Okay? I can do the same thing in the plant search, wherever the plant search went. In 1 second. Okay. I can do the same thing there. You see that plant search also extends activity because plant search is a direct child of this thing called activity. But if I turn it into a grandchild of activity and put a parent in between the two, then we can share common functionality across screens. That's very powerful. So what I'm going to do then is I'm going to go back to Location Finder and I'm going to choose all of these methods that I created in the process of making a menu. Okay? I'm going to right click, I'm going to say refactor, and I'm going to say extract superclass. Extract superclass. Okay? It's going to give me an option here called superclass name, and I want something that's general because all of my activities will extend this. We'll call it plant places activity. Okay? And we're going to say down here we need to click each of the menus that we want to put in this common parent. And again, it's going to be the last four. It's going to be the ones that we created as part of this menu. So I say superclass name plant places activity. I'm going to copy that into the clipboard because I know I'm going to need that in a minute. I click the four methods I want to push up to this brand new parent. And then finally, I choose finish. Okay, that's fine. And it just shows me what it's going to do, and I choose finish. Okay, now take a look. Those methods are no longer in Location Finder. Okay, those methods are no longer in Location Finder. And if we go to the top of Location Finder, we see that Location Finder no longer extends activity. It now extends Plant Places activity. We hold Control and mouse click on that, and it will take us to the Plant Places activity. And now that extends activity. So you see we've now inserted something between these two. And this something that we've inserted has the 4 methods that we created to make that menu operational. Now only one more small change we have to make. We have to take the same Plant Places activity and squeeze it between the search plant screen and the activity that it's currently extending. This is called superclassing in object-oriented programming. So I promised today we were going to talk a lot about concepts of object-oriented programming, and here's another one. This one's called superclassing. So I hold down Control-Shift and press R, and I'm going to say plant search activity. That's coming a bit off screen, but there we go. And now a very minor change here. Instead of extends activity, I change this to say extends Plant Places activity, and I choose save. Now, if we want to verify what we've done, I put my mouse on Plant Search activity, I hold down Control and hit T, and we see that we have Plant Search activity, the new guy, Plant Places activity, and then the one we extended before called activity. So you see we've just inserted something new right here. Okay. Now I wanted to walk through this example and show you how to do a bit of refactoring, but to be honest, if I were you, it would be just as valid to create this superclass activity from the start and have each of your individual activities extend from this, whichever you prefer. Okay, I'm going to save that then, and no red lines, which of course is always good, and now I'm going to right click and choose debug as, and then Android application. We'll go ahead and have it run on the emulator we currently have going, and we'll give that a moment to come up. Now let's take a look, and we see we have the search screen, and I can hit GPS a plant, and we'll go to the GPS screen, and I can hit search plants, and we go back to the search screen, and all of this time we have the same menu options there. So now the menu options are universal, and we can continue to expand this as we add more screens. Much easier to navigate than not having anything, actually. So okay, so that will put us in pretty good shape. That will put us in pretty good shape for having our menus. So that's menus. We saw that we could create menus by creating an XML-based layout. And we know that when we make this XML-based layout, we have to pay very special attention to this field, this ID actually. Let me Control M so we can see it in big screen. We have to pay close attention to this ID here because that MNU search plants is the same thing that we're going to see on our Plant Places activity, on our Superclass activity, if you will. That's probably a better thing to call it. It's the same thing we're going to see here when we're determining which item the user has selected. So that's very important. We also saw that we could refactor, and we can insert a class between something like our location finder and the activity. Okay, we can insert this Plant Places activity as a common class between location finder and activity. And once we've done that, we can do the same thing with Plant Search activity. We can insert a class between the Plant Search activity and its previous, whoops, sorry, I pulled up the wrong one, and its previous parent activity. And by sharing a common ancestor, we can share certain logic. In this case, the logic that we're sharing is the menu logic. So by sharing a common ancestor, we can share logic like menu logic. We saw what overriding a method is. We saw what extending a class is. We got a little taste of what refactoring is and how we can extend a class and share some common logic. So we'll go ahead and cut off the lecture at this point. When on our next lecture we're going to take a look at web view and how we can view details of a plant in a web view. Thank you.